but a lot to replenish. The Commanders' 53-man roster is currently half that. Total of 28 unrestricted free agents remain unsigned out of Washington. That's the most in the NFL. They do, though, have more than $80 million in cap space, fourth most in the league currently, as they attempt to bring back Zach Ertz, Dante Fowler Jr., veteran linebacker Bobby Wagner, among others. Booker, we got lots of money with which to work. How can Washington continue to pay to build around their young QB?
Well, I think first and foremost, you got to protect him. I think anytime you get a franchise quarterback, I think you got to make sure your offensive line is tight. That way your quarterback is not running for his life the way Patrick Mahomes was in the Super Bowl. And once you protect him, now get him some more weapons. I love Terry McLaurin as a number one receiver. I think the world forgot about him, but the fact that Jayden Daniels came to Washington reminded everyone that Terry McLaurin is a top 5 to 6 receiver in this league. But you got to get more. You got to get some help. Zach Ertz can't be your number two receiver. I like De'Ami Brown, but De'Ami Brown to me is more of a 3 than a 2. So get this young man some help and take advantage of the rookie contract because he's going to be on there another 2 years. Protect him, get him some weapons, and allow this young man to go cook, Tim.
Yeah, so I had talked about this before where, you know, to me it's very obvious, obviously the O-line, but to me it's actually more about defense and getting him other weapons. You know, let Dan Quinn fulfill his vision of what this defense can be, because then that is going to make everything significantly easier for Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels will find a way. Jayden Daniels will elevate the players around him. We've already seen him do that. Give him protection. Give him a better defense. Give him extra possessions, better field position, you know, a legitimate run game, which hopefully then if you have a better O-line, that'll, you know, you'll have a better O-line, because I want him running as a secondary. You know, I really like next season. It's like, I want to see him almost like never be the leading rusher. It's not sustainable, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work for Lamar. It doesn't work for Josh Allen. You know, like it doesn't work. It's just too much. In a key game like the Super Bowl, do you need him to be the leading rusher? Absolutely. Worked for Jalen Hurts, right? It's worked for Jalen Hurts in both Super Bowls, but obviously the one that he actually won. But do you want him to be the leading rusher, you know, 8 out of 10 games, 7 out of 10 games? No. Not, absolutely not. That's what Josh Allen is in the playoffs. Doesn't work for them. It doesn't work, you know? So it's not about just getting these weapons and these fancy wide receivers and all this. Like, don't get me wrong, that would be great. You want it all, right? Like, obviously, you want the great O-line, you want the great D-line, you want the great corners, you want the wide receivers. It's like, you want Jamar Chase and A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley and the Eagles O-line and I guess the Eagles defense, you know, like, you want it all. And it's like, I get it, but this is also why you hired Dan Quinn. And to be clear, like, I want to support Jayden Daniels. I've talked about that extensively, that when you have a great quarterback, you want to support that quarterback. You don't just go, oh, it's okay, we got that figured out. That's not, you know, that's not what I'm saying either. But Dan Quinn has the ability to turn this into a top defense. Make no mistake about it, the Philadelphia Eagles are not going to win the Super Bowl if their defense also wasn't a top defense. It all matters. Again, look no further than the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow's got has the weapons. How's that working out for him? Oh, not good? Got it. So it's more than that. It's more than that. And so I really actually think, relatively speaking, the weapons that they have right now are good enough. Of course, if you can elevate, right? But at the top of the list for me is O-line. And then I'd have to kind of, you know, this is where you would have to kind of trust Cliff Kingsbury probably more than anything, to be like, listen, the lack of our consistent run game, you know, is that a running back issue? Is that an O-line issue? You know, like, kind of like where, you know, what kind of trouble are we running into there? And if it's more of an O-line issue, it's like, great, then you really only have to worry about the O-line. Buy yourself time. Jaden is then going to be able to be a smooth operator. And when you have a better defense, when you're getting extra possessions, shorter fields, you don't have to win these shows. You don't have to come from behind in the fourth quarter. You don't have to put up a ton of points. You get to just play situational football. You allow Jayden Daniels to also now be a game manager. And like, I remember making a clip months ago, back in the middle of the season. I was like, Jayden Daniels is an elite game manager and an elite, game breaker. But building a team that allows him to be the game manager It's just like, that is the way to go, man. That really is the way to go. I know it's boring. I know it's less flashy. I know it's less exciting. That is the way to go. That is the way to go. And the best way to be able to actually now win Super Bowls, to be able to be an elite game manager, is when you have kind of this balance of Jaden Daniels. When you have a great defense that obviously now, makes your job easier offensively, as well as still leaving the door open to let Jaden be Jaden, to let him do some of his own, big time stuff. You don't want to limit that too much, but it's just like, that can't be the foundation. So to me, it's just very obvious. I mean, it really is, which is funny because, again, it's dependent on the team. When I was doing a Denver Broncos team, I'm like, yeah, you need weapons. You need a tight end. You need a wide receiver. Like, you got the defense, you got the O-line. Like, you need some playmakers. You need to be able to get the ball in the hands of some guys who can then, get to work and do some damage. I don't look at the Commanders when they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles and be like, oh, if only they had a better wide receiver, they win. I'm like, that was not necessarily the case. That was not necessarily the situation. I know there was turnovers, but the Eagles were still able to do whatever they wanted offensively. And their defense rose to the occasion, obviously, again, like what we saw in the Super Bowl. So, to me, that's very obvious. It was rare that I'm watching games and I'm just like, Jaden just has no weapons to work with. That's not, to me, what was holding this team back. But letting Dan Quinn elevate this defense and make this a top defense in the NFL, now you're going to give Jayden Daniels a top defense. Many games where he only has to put up like 21 points. Are we serious? I mean, like that's what I'm saying. Like, that's how, like, almost stupid easy it feels like. I mean, look at this. They were already 5th in offense. And their defense, they were giving up 23. We know Dan Quinn can do better than that. We know when you give Dan Quinn the pieces that he can do better than that. I mean, we know that. Imagine you get that number down now, and this means everything. A few points means, obviously, in football, we know this. That's why every spread is always like -3.5, -2. I mean, like, it's the difference. And then it changes the way how you're also going to run your offense. But my whole thing is like, 28.5 points per game. You're not like, Jayden Daniels is so special. They need to find a way to, like, make him be able to explode even more. It's like, no. Find the ways to make his life even easier. And protect him, obviously, and defense. Which, again, it's funny for me to say because I pretty much said this very little in the offseason, last offseason. But this offseason I'm just like, no, like, this is what it is. And again, this is why you hired Dan Quinn. Otherwise, there would be no reason to hire Dan Quinn. You hired Dan Quinn because you believe that he can turn that 18th ranked off defense to a top 5 defense. That number could be like, 18, 19 point game. Having some of those games where, like, you're holding a team to like 14, 10 points, whatever it is. A really low scoring where they don't get points until like the end when it's just kind of like doesn't matter. Just making everything super easy. This is what Dan Quinn had this defense. 18.5 points per game. 5th in the league. 5th. I mean, that's massive. You give that to Jayden Daniels and give him an O-line, I really don't think he needs, these special weapons. Like I said, let me emphasize. Obviously, you need to be able to throw the ball to someone. But, like, yeah, you can use it. Honestly, and that, as long as Zach Ertz continue to stay healthy, yeah, Zach Ertz can actually be your second wide receiver. And again, get the run game going. And have Jaden use his legs in ways where he's just picking up 7, 8 yards, 6 yards, getting down, getting out of bounds. Nice and smooth. The dude should have a smile on his face. Like, if you give Jayden Daniels a defense like this, Jaden should have a smile on his face from start to finish. So, yeah, let Dan Quinn build, or just this offseason, I should say, Let Dan Quinn do what the dude can do defensively. Because this was the Dallas Cowboys before Dan Quinn. Okay? 28th. 29.6 points. They get Dan Quinn. And obviously there's other changes that are being made, obviously. Goes down to 21.1 points per game, 7th. Then the season after that goes down to 5th, 20th. And then the season after that, which is the one that I just showed you, boom. 18.5. So let Dan Quinn cook. And it matters. It matters. And, you know, I just think that ultimately will make everybody's life easier. You know, giving up 37 to the Buccaneers. I know it was week 1, but still. 33 to the Bengals. They had a high-powered offense, but other defenses were able to slow them down. The Eagles slowed them down. They held them to I think 17 points. Like, again, any of the big Commanders' defensive stops were against teams that were not great. You know, like the Browns, the Patriots, or no, actually that's preseason. The Cardinals, the Panthers. It's like, yeah, I expect that. But then the Steelers, they were able to hang 28. The Eagles with a backup quarterback, 33. Falcons, 24, with like a rookie quarterback's like second game. It's like those are some of the more little things, not to mention situationally. I'd love to see more situational moments defensively that really end up changing the game. And the best example of that this past season was arguably the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills. And situationally, like, there was a moment when it was like, okay, maybe the Bills are going to be able to win this. And it was like, the defense was like, nope, we're going to disrupt you in the most important moments of the game. That's what I want to see. Jayden Daniels against the Ravens, 30 to 23. Eagles, 24 to 19. Ravens. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's actually kind of perfect. You're talking about the other divisional team, the Eagles. And again, I know it's always frustrating for, individual teams. Like, I encourage fans to just accept that and don't automatically be like, oh, the Eagles are bad. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't do that. Don't be that fan. Don't be that fan. But like, again, per example, Lamar Jackson against the Ravens. Lamar Jackson against the Commanders felt very comfortable. It was a smooth game. This was Lamar Jackson, 20 for 26, 323 yards. He rushed for 40. Derrick Henry, 24 carries, 132 yards. Zay Flowers eaten, Bateman eaten, Andrews eaten. And I remember that game. Like, there was, it was just kind of like, oh yeah. I mean, Lamar looked comfortable the whole game. They were 6 for 10 on third down. 6 for 10. Time of possession, 36 minutes. Against the Eagles, 6 for 15 on third down. 1 for 2 on fourth. Like, that's the difference between winning that game and losing that game. It wasn't the high-powered offense. It was the defense. So that's actually where I want to see the emphasis, which is funny because sometimes when you have a quarterback like a Jayden Daniels or just that level of talent, you're kind of like, well, let's go all in on the offense. Let's really do what we can do. And sometimes it's interesting. And in some ways, I could make like the opposite argument, like for like Josh Allen. It's like, give Josh Allen support, Don't be so focused on the defense. Like, give Josh Allen more support. And that's why it's not like a copy and paste thing, which is why I actually love that they're in the situation that they're in with the salary cap space they have, the 28 unrestricted free agents, because they didn't know what they had going into this season. You're guessing and you're speculating. You're like, all right, how's Cliff going to work? How's Dan Quinn going to work here? How's Jaden You technically weren't sure if you were going to get Jayden Daniels. I mean, you probably had a pretty strong thought, but you don't know. You don't 100% know just yet. And so, but now they know. They got to play this whole season. They got to see everything. They got to see how these games unfolded. And, you know, don't put yourself in a situation where your offense has to, you know, every game have to outrun your defense. I just don't think that's the way to go. If you had an offensive head coach, especially, I could see the argument for that more, for sure. And I think if Jayden Daniels was also a little bit more physical, but he, you know, even this last season, he got banged up. You know, he legitimately got banged up, and it compromised his ability to play. You know, that is a real thing. So again, you want to take things off his plate rather than constantly just put things on his plate. And I will continue to be a broken record with regards to that. Which is funny because this is not actually, I planned on making a different video when I saw this clip, more so about because Dan Quinn kind of talked about some of the things that Jayden Daniels is going to work on, and you know, and the work that he's going to put in, and all of that. And I just think that Jayden Daniels is so efficient that, imagine again, like, the way how you help him again is like you give him extra possessions, you give him shorter fields, like that alone is going to be great, but also support him in a way where he doesn't have to constantly go for it on fourth down, but also at the same time, if you're up 21-7, you don't have to keep going for it on fourth down. You don't have to keep being in these throwing situations as well. You could run the clock, you dominate time of possession. You know, it just becomes an easier game. And, you know, you're setting yourself up to then not run out of gas in the playoffs, because at this point also you're thinking playoffs. You're thinking, what do we need in the playoffs? How can we be just as fresh in January, whatever, compared to November? And it's an exhausting way to play. It was exciting to see how great Jayden Daniels was in that offense on fourth downs and fourth quarters and all of that. But it can be an exhausting way to play. You can get away with it for a season, but to like keep relying on that, even if you have the weapons, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. So I continue to be excited to see kind of what decisions and moves they make. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Washington Commanders? Do you think they should prioritize? Because again, obviously we can say both, but if you had to kind of pick and choose, like kind of where do you think the needs are more right now? More offensively driven or defensively driven or more weapon driven? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.